And we're eventually going to be wrapping things up. We're going to be picking right back up at chapter 27 of Deuteronomy. And Moses with the elders of Israel commanded the people, saying, Keep all the commandments which I command you this day. Notes, well, he's talking about possession of the land, and it depended on obedience to the law. Okay, verse 2. And it shall be on the day when you shall pass over Jordan unto the land which the Lord your God gives you, that you shall set thee up great stones, and plaister them with plaister. And you shall write upon them all the words of this law when you are passed over, that you may go in unto the land which the Lord your God gives you, a land that flows with milk and honey, as the Lord your God of your fathers has promised you. Notes, it is not actually known as to whether each and all of the legislative enactments of the Torah were to be recorded, or rather the substance and essence of the law. But even if the whole was to be inscribed, there would be no serious difficulty in the way of carrying this into effect, and seeing there is no limitation as to the number of the stones to be set up. Well, at any rate, this law was to be plain and clear for everybody to see. Verse 4. Therefore it shall be, when you be gone over Jordan, that you shall set up these stones which I command you this day in Mount Ebal, and you shall plaister them with plaister. Notes, now, Mount Ebal, which was right beside Mount Gerizim and located in the very center of Israel, was referred to as the Mount of Cursing, and this pertained to the judgment of God. The stones were to be set up upon this mount, stipulating that if the laws were broken, the curse of the broken law would come upon the perpetrators, even as we shall see in the latter part of this chapter. Verse 5. And there shall you build an altar unto the Lord your God, an altar of stones. You shall not lift up any iron tool upon them. You shall build the altar of the Lord your God of whole stones, and you shall offer burnt offerings thereon unto the Lord your God. Notes. Now this is a little bit interesting. The stones which made up the altar, which was a type of Christ and the cross, were to be whole stones and not stones which had been made to fit by man. Okay? This tells us that the cross of Christ must not be altered in any way. The fact that this altar was to be set up on Mount Ebal, the place of cursing, tells us that man's problem is sin. It was not to be set up on Mount Gerizim, which was the Mount of Blessing, but regrettably, this is where the modern church has set her altar, which refuses to admit that man's problem is sin. As well, the law was kept only by Christ, and hence the altar on Mount Ebal. And we as believers can keep the moral law, which is still incumbent upon everyone, only by fulfilling fully trusting Christ and what He has done for us at the cross. Verse 7. And you shall offer peace offerings, and shall eat there, and rejoice before the Lord your God. Notes. Now, the burnt offerings and peace offerings were commanded, but no sin offering. For the people of that day, presupposes a redeemed people, but placed under the curse if they should break the law. Now, the Apostle Paul based his argument in Galatians chapter 3 upon this very chapter, verse 8. Throat's still kind of thick here. Sorry about that, but verse 8. And you shall write upon the stones all the words of this law very plainly. Notes. Now, the blessings of Gerizim are entirely omitted here, for the subject was the judgment that would surely follow upon failure in a full obedience to the commandments engraved upon the stones. Now, as stated, the altar was erected on Ebal, not on Gerizim. And as pointed out, sin offerings are not even mentioned. The burnt offerings and peace offerings were to be presented by those who had fulfilled the righteousness of the law. Now, only one man accomplished that, and he was on the Mount of Cursing, erecting erected an altar upon which he offered himself as a sin offering for all those who, by disobedience, had brought upon themselves the doom of the law, and, well, obviously that's death. Now, at the same time, in thus offering up himself, he became on behalf of these guilty lawbreakers the burnt offering and the peace offering, which our sin and failure made it possible to bring to God. Okay? Verse 9. And Moses and the priests, the Levites, spoke unto all Israel, saying, Take heed and hearken, O Israel. This day you are become the people of the Lord your God. Notes. Obviously, much responsibility is being placed upon them. Verse 10. You shall therefore obey the voice of the Lord your God, and do his commandments and his statutes, which I command you this day. And Moses charged the people the same day, saying, These shall stand upon Mount Gerizim to bless the people when you are come over Jordan, Simeon and Levi and Judah and Issachar and Joseph and Benjamin. Notes. Now, these particular tribes were to stand upon Mount Gerizim, which was very close to Mount Ebal, and pronounce blessings upon Israel, which account of blessings is given in the next chapter, okay, verse 13. And these shall stand upon Mount Ebal to curse Reuben, Gad, and Asher, and Zebulun, Dan, and Naphtali. Notes. Now, this has nothing to do with profanity as we would think of in modern terms. It's not the amount of four-letter words, in other words. They were to stand for the curse. It does not say they were to curse the people. All who broke the law were already cursed. Well, guess what? That's everybody but Jesus. Verse 14. And the Levites shall speak and say unto all the men of Israel with a loud voice. Notes. They were probably situated between the two mountains, with the Levites standing a voice distance away from another and shouting loudly the messages of the Lord, in order that all the people of Israel would hear. Verse 15. Now we're going to get back to idolatry. Cursed be the man who makes any graven or molten image, an abomination unto the Lord, the work of his hands of the craftsman, and puts it in a secret place. And all the people shall answer and say, Amen. Notes. Now, each of the first 11 curses is directed against some particular sin already denounced in the law. It's going to be pretty obvious. Verse 16. Cursed be he who sets light by his father or his mother, and all the people shall say, Amen. Notes. Obviously, this is talking about the failure to honor the father and the mother. Now, this doesn't mean that the son or the daughter must allow the mother and the father to just ruin their life. But the idea is you are supposed to respect their position and who they are in your life. Verse 17. Cursed be he who removes his neighbor's landmark, and all the people shall say Amen. Notes. Now, by fraud, it's talking about fraud, someone attempting to steal another's property by secretly changing the boundaries, okay? That's not very good. Verse 18. Cursed be he who makes the blind to wander out of the way, and all the people shall say Amen. Notes. This is utterly despicable. It's basically talking about being cruel to people who are handicapped or mentally ill or such. It's completely unacceptable, and it's an abomination for reasons it should be overwhelmingly obvious. Verse 19. Cursed be he who perverts the judgment of the Gentile, the fatherless and widow, and all the people shall say Amen. Notes. Failure to show kindness to all, even the least among them, is just plain flat out unacceptable. And we must pick up in Deuteronomy chapter 27, verse 20. Thank you very much, and God bless.